Thank you for joining us for The Drive Back, the movie podcast where we imitate our favorite thing to do after a movie, which of course is to talk about it on the ride home. I'm Garrett, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Adrian.
Hey,
And today, we've got a brand new episode type for 2022, which is what, Adrian?
this is what we are calling Phone a Friend. We talked about it last episode, but this is kind of, with such a backlog of movies to watch for the podcast, we felt that we were kind of missing out on some of those ones that friends wanted us to watch because we were kind of just overwhelmed with what we're already watching. So this episode kind of allows a shoe-in for that. We ask all of our friends and listeners to tell us what they want us to watch, and we pick one of those. And that kind of lets us bump it back to the top of the list and keep it in rotation. Also lets us watch things that maybe don't necessarily just interest us and interests you guys. So we're always willing to do that, and that's what this episode exists for.
That's absolutely right, and today we're taking a look at a film requested by friend of the show, Cassidy, also Adrian's girlfriend, which is going to be Land of the Lost. So all of this and more coming up on the drive back. Alright, so we're back with our very first Phone a Friend. We've got Cassidy's choice for us, which is Land of the Lost. Now, I can't quite remember if Cassidy said this is her favorite movie or it is one of her favorites, and that's why she picked it for us. Do you have any more
It is
insight on that?
one of her favorites next to Kicking and Screaming. So two Will Ferrell movies are her
Interesting.
favorite films.
All right, so we kind of have an idea on what her taste is as far as lead actors. But
And men, hilarious. So
There you
I don't
go.
know what that says about me, but
well, let's go ahead and jump into the details for Land of the Lost before we talk any spoilers or anything. If you do want to watch Land of the Lost, it is available for rent only, unfortunately. So you do have to go through your preferred rental place or purchase the movie, either way. But released in 2009, Land of the Lost was directed by Brad Silberling and stars Will Ferrell, Anna Friel, and Danny McBride. A space-time vortex sucks scientist Rick Marshall and his assistant Holly and a survivalist named Will into a world populated by dinosaurs and painfully slow creatures called Sleestaks. Now time for the awards. It won a Razzie Award for Worst Remake, Sequel, or Spin-Off and was nominated for 6 more, including Worst Actor for Will Ferrell, Worst on-screen couple for Will Ferrell and anything else on the screen. That is the nomination. Worst supporting actor for Jorma Taccone, who was played Chaka. Worst director, worst screenplay, and worst picture. Now that all that is out of the way, Adrian, had you seen this? Obviously, you've seen this movie before. I'm sure you've watched it with Cassidy.
yes. And I think I saw it before we started dating, and we watched it when we started dating as well, because it is her favorite movie.
Gotcha. Overall thoughts?
I definitely think this is a movie that wanted to be very unique, and I think it hits on a couple of those points. But I also think it misses quite a bit, and I don't think it ages very well in terms of its style of comedy. I don't think this movie being made now would be famous at all. Or, I don't even think it'd get made. Like, I don't think it fits with the modern type of humor, so it definitely feels a little dated, but there's still some scenes and some jokes in there that had me laughing. It still got to me a little bit.
All right. I remember this movie when it first came out. Came out when I was in high school, and actually, yeah, high school. And I remember when it came out, I thought it was enjoyable enough. It was like I hesitate to say a family adventure, but it's an adventure film, so I was kind of like, yeah, I'll give it a shot, and I thought it was okay. Coming back all these years later, I haven't seen it since 2009, so that's, I didn't have any expectations going into this, and God, I hate this movie. Like, it is... There are 2 things in this movie that they don't save the movie, but they add points to it. Number 1 is that this is thankfully just an hour and a half, and that includes credits. Like, it's a short movie, And then there is some actually cool camera work.
Hmm.
Like the first person, like there's times where the cameraman feels like a character,
Hmm.
which is a little inconsistent for the story. You're like, who else is there? But it adds for some interesting, like there's some interesting, like they're not good jokes, but at least they use the camera to the effect of telling the joke.
Yeah,
But
I think it's a standard Will Ferrell, Danny McBride movie. I mean, obviously those are the two people, and it feels like that. I still have a good time when I watch it. I think it's fun. I think it's definitely a movie that didn't take itself too seriously. Probably thought it was gonna get some Razzies while it was being made. Like that's just how the movie feels. Like it just seems like a bunch of friends had an idea and they made a movie. And
yeah,
that's kind of how this whole movie feels. It's like, yeah, the humor might not be necessarily to your taste anymore or at all, but it does seem like they had a good time filming, and the movie feels like a homemade project that, to me, gives it a little bit of charm. And I feel like it definitely has a tone to it, and I find that pretty fun.
all right, that's totally, and I can see where you're coming from. It does feel like, you know, the way I kind of imagine it is that the production company, the writers, and then like Danny McBride and Will Ferrell all just got super high while watching the original Land of the Lost show, and we're like, we can do that. And no
Yeah.
one in the room was like, no, we can't. Like, yeah,
That's
it's
how it
just,
feels like.
oh,
It feels like if my friends and I suddenly had the deep pockets enough to make the movie that I just envision in my head.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, we can make it. Yeah, we have the $100 million. Let's go for it. No rules. Like, just do whatever you want to do. And that's how the movie felt. And to me, it does feel like a bunch of friends making a silly movie. And I think that's pretty fun. And I think I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And I do like Will Ferrell. So as much as some of his jokes is probably more akin, in my opinion, to like a Sherlock Holmes version of Will Ferrell. Maybe not at his funniest, but definitely still Will Ferrell, and some of the jokes do still hit me as pretty funny and pretty witty as well. But there's also some that are just really, really forced, and some that make no sense at all. Without getting into too many spoilers, there's like a singing scene that takes place towards the end of the movie that just comes out of nowhere,
Makes no sense.
and there's no setup
Not to
for it.
mention
Or anything.
the dance sequence too that
Yeah,
precedes it. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
we
but
can
I
go
mean,
into full spoilers. We've already kind of
I guess
talked.
so. Yeah, and then also like I really enjoyed the scene, not the scene of him pouring urine on himself, but the scene of Danny McBride just going, "How did you get that?" And like I feel like that's the part that I guess what I like from this movie is I love the moment before the supposed joke. I love the setup and like the kind of like iffiness of it, especially at the end when he's like, "He just needed to pass it," and he goes, "How did how did you do that?" And it's like, don't worry about it. I find that kind of stuff pretty funny. Um, but yeah, there's some of it that's just really, really off now, and I can totally see myself in 2009 being much younger and just thinking it's very, very laugh out loud funny.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think some of it got me still. So yeah,
I'd like to say the same, but I think there were maybe, and I can't even remember the jokes that I thought were funny in this movie. Like I think the first one when he's talking about like like what you said when Danny McBride's like how did you get it, and they're more focused on how he got it than actually how he did. And then like the moment when he actually dumps a pee on himself is awful. Like this really hurts. Might as well do it again. Like
yeah.
and get it in the old bloodstream. Let me drink it. It's the stupidest shit in that. Oh my god.
And then one of the
Um,
jokes I didn't like either was the one where he like talks into the camera, kind of in the beginning, and he says like it's 12 a.m. Zulu time, and he's like talking overly scientific, and you can tell they just told Will Ferrell to talk into the camera and be funny, and he's just trying so hard to make that a cohesive humor and a cohesive joke, and it. Yeah, so I mean, my whole review of this is that it doesn't necessarily hold up, but I still think it's got its charm to me. It feels like a fun movie that I would have loved to be a part of making. I think it would have been absolutely fun to be on set for this. I'm sure it was absolutely a riot with all of them hanging out and making jokes. So I feel like that comes across on screen to me personally, and that makes the movie enjoyable to watch.
I think you would have made a funnier movie. I'll just go ahead and say that right now. But I think this would have been because there does feel like there's a lot of ad lib in this, and Will Ferrell is not good at ad lib. I also need to disclose I'm not a Will Ferrell fan at all, so that's kind of another issue I have going into the movie. But I think it would have been better if it was made during the '80s and it had Bill Murray in it. His ad lib would have been way better. Maybe it's just because I watched Ghostbusters recently, so I was like, I just had that in my head
Sure.
as I was going. But man, like it's one of those movies. Like I look at it and I kind of like, as I'm sitting there watching it, an hour in, I'm like, and I very rarely ever say this, but it's like I'm not getting that time back. Like I wasted an hour and a half of my life. Like I could have been saving the world. I don't know. Like I could have been doing anything else
Sure.
except in that moment. But it's also one of those movies like, yes, it gets a low score for me. Yes, I think it's a really, really bad movie. But it's one of those ones where I understand that people have a nostalgic place for it. Like I
Sure.
understand people having like speaking directly to Cassie, which I'm sorry ahead of time. If we play on Xbox tonight, apparently I might hear something or two. But like I understand why you like this movie, and I understand how you like this movie. But like, man, I
I also think this movie is definitely a really fun one. I think this is what it was made for, is for people to get either very drunk or very high and sit down and
oh yeah,
watch it. And I think that's not, I mean, obviously that's not us, but this movie does have an audience. To me, it lines up. Of course, I wouldn't say it's as good as Pineapple Express or any like Sausage Party
mm-hmm.
or any of those like movies, but they do have a purpose, and the purpose is for people to watch them that aren't looking to critique the movie. So there's kind
Yeah.
of a paradox in us critiquing this film. If you look up reviews for this movie, they're non-existent. There's like 2 on YouTube. It's just not a movie that's meant to be reviewed, and I think reviewers know that. So here we are forging new paths. But
Let's go.
I think it's a movie that exists in a very niche area of film, in that it exists beyond critique, and that if you enjoy watching it, you enjoy watching it. And I bet you know that it's not up to snuff with some of the Oscar winners of the year. But I think that you know that, and that's okay. And I think that kind of puts it a little bit outside of the box in terms of what's accessible and what's actually critiquable, right? Like, yeah, okay, it might arguably not be a good movie, but you can still enjoy it, and that's a very niche window.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. I think you can critique this movie. I can critique it to high hell, but
Yeah,
like,
but I think it's like, but people don't, because there's no, I don't, and not that I'm obviously critiquing it as well, but I don't think there's necessarily any value in that, because I don't think people are looking for critiques on this movie.
true. Yeah, I mean, it's been so long and people have mostly forgotten about this movie that like, maybe we're
I think people
undermining.
remember the show more,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think we're undermining the own purpose of our channel and our podcast here by saying that like it's not critiquable. But my
Saying that
other
I think this movie, I think that is a critique of it, is that it exists to me outside of a realm. Like I wouldn't critique necessarily, me personally. I don't think I would have any real review for Pineapple Express or for Sausage Party. Like I just don't really
Interesting.
feel like I have. Those exist in a weird realm to me of like film.
The only movie I would agree with that on for me are the Jackass movies because they're not like
Great example.
movies. They're like collections of skits. So like
That's a good example. Okay,
I
yeah,
am
maybe
looking
that's more
forward
accurate.
to our review
Review.
of Jackass Forever, but maybe we'll just go like bit by bit. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
scene
in
by
theater, write them
scene.
all down. Like, this is this one, this is this one, and then they give it a rating or something. I don't know. Well, I don't know how we're gonna do that one.
I think I
Um,
I might just find comedy movies hard to critique, because to me they're so subjective.
yeah, I,
And I think that might be where the difficulty comes for me. Maybe that's my actual message in this,
and
is that it's just hard to
maybe that's
do.
how you're seeing this film because I saw it as an adventure film first and a comedy second.
And I definitely saw it as a comedy first.
Yeah, so maybe that's
Interesting. Yeah, maybe that's the
but
crux of it right there.
it does lead into my main critique of this movie in that it doesn't know what it wants to be.
Agreed. I
I
can
don't.
definitely sense that.
I There are moments when I feel like this is supposed to be a family movie, and then there's moments where it's clearly not. Like it's so childish, like things that children would find funny, but in a movie that's not appropriate for children. I would say, like
Yeah.
it's just
And I don't know who. It does feel like there were a couple people on set that had couple differing opinions on what should happen in every scene. And I think that's where the movie might lose a little bit of its cohesiveness in terms of its linear storyline. I think it kind of jumps around, and I guess I was looking some stuff up. I guess they do some pretty rough stuff with some well-liked characters from the original show, so I get why the dedicated fans didn't necessarily like it. But yeah, I think it's just it's a comedy movie, and I think some of it hits my comedy bone. And I think that not all of it does, but some of it does, and I find it an entertaining movie.
There you go. Well, I feel
there
like that's enough. Yeah, let's. Is that your final thought?
Yeah, that's my final thought. I gave this movie a 52.
Wow.
I found myself laughing. I definitely think there is that nostalgia that comes with it as well. I think it's kind of a warm movie for me. So I think that is part of the reason. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't say run out and see it. But if you want to have like a cool Saturday night and have a couple bottles of wine and watch the movie with squinted eyes or one eye closed, then might have a fun time.
Yeah, that's certainly a way to do it. I feel like any movie where we're like, it's a drinking game, or like, you know, if you partake in like, you know, other substances like that, the fact that like you have to have something to make something better is never a good sign. But as far as my final thoughts, I didn't really mince any words here. I said, thankfully, this hot mess of a film is short enough that it dulls the pain and has some cool camera work, but Land of the Lost certainly gets lost in its own stupidity. And I gave it a 7 out of 100. I think the
third lowest.
What was that?
Third lowest score of all time?
Of all time? On the show, maybe. I can double check that real quick. While I'm looking that up, Adrian, by now, if people don't know where to find us, where can they find us?
You can find us at the Drive Back Podcast, anywhere you might want to. On Instagram, we talk to everybody there, and we post some photos every time we have a new podcast episode out. You can find us on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you like. Leave us a 5-star review. Those help absolutely the most. So go ahead and drop that if you want to, and if we earned it. And then the Drive Back Podcast on YouTube, where if you can see our faces and we can see yours, then you're here. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, and then hit the little bell button as well. That'll make sure you get notified every Monday. And I know we do exclusive content here on YouTube. Actually, we have a MCU stacked tier list. If you want to find out our feelings on all MCU movies up until Spider-Man No Way Home, you can go ahead and find that over on our YouTube channel or here on our YouTube channel, depending on where you're listening. So go ahead, and that's coming out, and that's going to be a big one. And we're very excited about doing that. So you can find out our opinion on all of those at once. And that'll be only on YouTube, not here on podcast form. So make sure to head over there and subscribe so you get notified when that comes out.
Absolutely. Really looking forward to that. So make sure you check it out. I just looked it up. This is my 5th lowest rated film. From the show, it is my 7th lowest rated film of all time.
Okay.
So the only things that are lower than this, I gave Deck the Halls a 1.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Which you also gave a 4, so we were on the same boat about that one. There was The Nun, which I gave a 5.
That's
there was Alien Resurrection, which I gave a 4, and Artemis Fowl, which I gave a 5.
Nice.
And then the only ones that we didn't do on the podcast were. Actually, there's 3 others that we didn't do on the podcast. I had The Starving Games, which I covered on my blog, which I gave a 1.
We've talked about it on the podcast adjacently, though.
The movie's awful. And then Space Jam New Legacy, I gave a 3, and Cinderella, I gave a 4.
Nice.
So, not the good Cinderella from Disney, the Amazon Prime dog shit one.
That's the Garrett Suicide Squad of movies, or those. They're expendable.
they all come together to end me. Yeah, so that's gonna be it. Make sure you watch, like Adrian said, watch out for that video coming. It should be up by the time this episode is up. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Next week we have a show and tell. Adrian has selected the found footage movie The Objective, which is available for rent only, unfortunately.
Don't pretend like you know what movie that is. I know no one's seen it.
I had never heard of it before he said it. So, but then I have selected the classic puppet film from Jim Henson called The Dark Crystal, which is on both Netflix and HBO Max. So that is going to be next week. We love you so much. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.